Welcome back to my channel. My name is Madeline Stage. I'm the owner of Goheen, where I design and sell PDF sewing patterns, printable planner pages, and sewing kits made from repurposed materials. Today, I'm going to show you how I'm setting up my May spreads for 2026. For this month, I'm moving into a brand new planner from Archer and Olive. It has a gorgeous moonlit garden design on the front and some holographic foiling, and I wanted my first set of spreads in this journal to kind of reflect the theme of the overall notebook. So I did a little swatching with some pens to see what colors I would like that fit the theme. Once I did that, I was ready to get in and actually start the journaling. My first set of spreads is a cover page on the left and what I call my aims page on the right. Along with matching the colors of the journal, I also wanted to match the theme. So my cover page has flowers and moon, and my quote is about moonlight. Now, every year I have a word of the year, and this year that word is light. And every month I pick a quote for my cover page that somehow uses my word of the year. So, matching the light theme to the moonlight, I chose "The moonlight shows us for what we really are." Brownie points to anyone who can name that movie. The aims page on the right consists of 6 boxes with highlights and a sticker title on each one of the boxes. This page is kind of a breakdown of my aims for the month. Basically, anything I would like to accomplish, but it's broken down into 6 different categories to make it seem a little less overwhelming. My categories end up being aims, tasks, goals, Goheen, to get, and to clean. Turning the page, I'm now setting up my calendar spread for the month of May. This is the first spread this month that I had to really think about the sizing. I'm using a square-sized notebook for the first time, and I'm used to using an A5. So the pages here are wider than I'm used to. So I had to rethink how I structured a lot of things in this notebook. For the calendar specifically, I ended up making the days wider than I normally would, but it still left quite a bit of room on the side. So I ended up adding in a whole other section that I don't usually have. The plan is to use it as a little bit of an overview for each week of what things I would like to accomplish. Like maybe I'll take a few of the items from my aims page and assign them to specific weeks here. Along with the marker colors I picked out and some more moon and flower decorations you'll see me put on, I also am using printed out headers this month. I printed them out on sticky printable washi paper, and then I trace around them with an X-Acto knife and basically use them like stickers. The next spread I created is a combination of my monthly review on the left and my habit tracking on the right. Because I track so many habits, I usually have one full 2-page spread just for habit tracking when I use an A5 notebook. So it was a bit of an awkward amount of space because it just barely doesn't fit on one page here in a square notebook. But it seemed way too empty to just center it in the middle of a 2-page spread and just have all of that space on either side. So I ended up taking just a little bit of extra space for the habits and then using the other side for my monthly review, which is a little more flexible as far as how much room it takes up. On the left-hand side, I have a column for all the habits, and across the top, I go by date of the month, and then in the intersection, I fill in each habit with a circle. So either a hollow circle for a micro low end part of the habit, or if I do the full habit, then I fill in the circle. Or it's left blank if I didn't do it at all that day. But I do want to point out that I don't actually intend to do all of these habits every single day. It just is easier for me to have a full monthly overview to see when I last did something, even if I'm only planning on doing it 4 times a month. As you can see, I have already started filling in my habits because by the time this was done, May had already started, which is not unusual for me. The part of the habit tracker that didn't fit on the right-hand side of the page is just two columns where I tally up exactly how many times I did both the low and high end of each habit every month. But it just takes up such a tiny bit of room that I thought it was fine to have it on the side page next to the habits, which is actually for my end of month review. This setup is really about having a title and about 20 different categories that at the end of the month I go in and I fill in some statistics. And it's a really simple page, but this actually took a really long time to set up because of trying to figure out how I wanted to decorate and putting in all of the tiny little headers that I printed out. I also actually forgot to print out the main title of May Review. So I haven't decided. I might go and print that out and add it in later, or I might just leave it. I mean, the decoration looks pretty good on its own. The next set of pages is for my finances and my journal, which is kind of confusing. It's like my journaling page where I like long form journal. You know what I mean? So the finances page will be on the left, and that's where I keep track of our budget and what we spend in each of the many categories I track. I do a lot of tracking here. So the setup is really just a bunch of second line highlights in two columns, and then I don't worry about it until the end of the month. Combine that with the fact that the journal space is really just a whole bunch of blank space, and this is a very quick spread to set up. I did decide to create a border on the top and the bottom with slightly different colors, and then I have my printed out titles as well. After that, I'm into my weekly pages, and this is the most exciting part of the new journal for me because it's given me a lot of room to play around with my weekly setups. And I've recently started adding like a full weekly schedule with hours included in my weekly spreads. But this bigger notebook size is giving me a chance to actually try out a few different versions of this schedule. Basically, I'm setting up each of the 4 weeks differently, testing out two different things, one being the width of the days in the schedule, and one being how I break down the time, whether it's by hour or by half hour. This first weekly spread, all of the days of the week fit on the left-hand page, so they're a little bit narrower. And there's not a whole lot of room at the bottom, and that's because I'm breaking each day down where each dot grid square is a half an hour, which gives me more room to be more detailed about the schedule, but takes up more of the page. And at the bottom of the page underneath the schedule, I'm leaving room for daily lists. I mean, in this case, there are only 4 slots, but basically I can write down my priorities for each day and be able to check them off. On the right page, I'm adding a rolling tasks list, which I use for things that I don't necessarily need to do on a particular day, or I'm working on them over multiple days and I can keep track of how often I'm working on them. There's also room for a weekly menu, some more habits to track on a weekly basis, and a nice big section for notes because I always seem to have notes to take during the week. I also ended up going in and putting second line highlights in for the schedule just to make it easier to read without having to write out the hours in every single column. But I'm not sure yet if this is something that I like enough that I'll do it again. What I've been doing in my April journal with these schedules is kind of a cross between planning out my week and also time tracking. So it's been really helpful to be able to see the hourly breakdown of what I'm doing and when, meetings, appointments, pickups, etc., and then be able to see where there are gaps in that time and where I could potentially have free time. And that way I can plan out what I could do during that free time. And it actually makes me feel like I have more free time when I can like outline it in a notebook and see it there on the page. And then I'm less likely to simply squander that time doing scrolling or random other tasks that could be done at other times when I don't have an actual block of time to myself. The flip side of that is that once the day has happened, I can actually go in and mark anything that didn't happen as planned. Maybe my daughter didn't nap and I didn't get that free time, and I can cross it off and be able to track what actually happened and track what I did with my free time and how long those sections were so that I can more accurately plan for the next week. For the second weekly spread, we still have the long columns that are broken down by half hour, but they're a little bit wider, giving me more room to write things out. But that means that Saturday and Sunday end up on the right-hand side of the page, and there's some extra room on the far left. So the week number and the menu and the habits all get shifted to the far left side of the left page. And then the rolling tasks ends up being a little bit smaller, and so does the notes section. And this time, instead of every other line highlights, I went in with a light gray pen and lined the top of the hour down the entire schedule. For the third week, you'll see that my schedule only goes down about halfway down the page. And that's because for this, I'm testing out each dot grid block being an hour instead of a half an hour. So it takes up about half the room. In theory, this gives me a lot of room underneath each day to make a list. Instead of just the 4 slots that I have on the previous pages, there are a lot more places to write a much longer list here. And it wouldn't necessarily be limited to just the priorities for the day because that's a lot of priorities. I will still use it for priorities at the very top, but the rest of it can be used for any sort of list that I need. Sometimes I find it really helpful if I am having decision fatigue, analysis paralysis, if I'm just like, what is the next best thing to do? I write a list of what I need to do immediately, even if it's something like take my pills, brush my teeth, pack a lunch, change the laundry, like the very small nitty gritty things that I can just do as I look down the list and I don't have to decide what's next because I've already decided in a list. And I do that now, but it tends to be in my notes app on my phone, which can be handy because then the phone can just come with me and I don't have to carry a notebook. But I feel like I want to try it out in a written form, and maybe that would be even more helpful. So, giving myself the space to do that here on these shorter schedules that have much more room at the bottom. But you'll see that the days are back to being narrower and they all fit on the left-hand side. And so that means the more room for the notes and a slightly longer set of rolling tasks also fit on this weekly spread. Week 4 is, you guessed it, the last combination. Wider days, but still a shorter schedule with hour blocks. So pretty much the same. You've seen this before, but this is the last combination of the 4. Doing experiments like this and trying out different styles is one of my favorite things about having a completely blank dot grid journal. You can really customize it for not only what you need and what you want, but this specific time in your life. I remember not that long ago in my notebooks, my weekly spreads were simply writing each day of the week, and that was it. I did it in a decorative way, but there were no specific places for lists, no schedule, nothing. It took so much less time. But in this season of my life, I do feel like I need a little more structure and a little more granular insight into what my weeks look like. And when you're making your own journal spreads, you can do that. You can do whatever you need to whenever you need to. I could do a completely different type of setup next month if that's what I wanted, and I love that. The final spread that I'm adding in for May is an extra free space for jotting things down, making sewing doodles, schematics, or whatever I need. That'll be on the right-hand side. And then the left, there's going to be what I call a rotating menu, which is a place where, in theory, I can plan out what our meals may be, but not just for the week, on a longer rotation, which sometimes helps with my meal planning, where I can see that I am not repeating meals. It always feels like I just made a certain meal, but if I can put it on a schedule where I'm only making it every 4 weeks, 5 weeks, then it makes me feel a little better that I'm not just making the same things over and over. It can also help with decision fatigue. If you just set it on a schedule, then you just go through the schedule and you don't have to decide every week what's happening. I also used this in the past in combination with a grocery app where they let you set up different lists of your groceries that you can save, and then you could have a different list of groceries for each of these weeks and just automatically add it to your cart when the week arrives and then just tweak it from there. That was before I changed up what I was eating, so I haven't done that, but I'm aspiring to do that again. And here I'm just adding in a few more decorative details throughout, adding some stickers to the weekly spreads and the journal page. And then we are on to our final flip through. If you do any time tracking in your journal, I would love to hear about it. I would love to know how you set up your pages in order to accommodate scheduling, no matter the size of the notebook. I hope you have enjoyed watching me make these spreads and hearing what's going on in my head when I do it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I hope you have a great week.